How do you cope with a chaotic world when you already have a chaotic brain? Today, I want to share what actually helps me stay grounded when my ADHD brain is spinning, and maybe help you or somebody you love feel a little less alone. Okay, this might sound like a lot, because it probably is, but stick with me. I promise there is a method in the mental mayhem. I want you to understand the chaos that goes on in some of our heads so that you understand why we are the way we are and why we react the way we do sometimes. But also, I want to share how I got to this calming point in my thinking. So this one is for my ADHD people, or the people who love them. And honestly, that's just about everybody, because we are actually everywhere. Sometimes we're loud, sometimes we're quiet, occasionally we're a little scary, but we are always unforgettable because we are interesting, to say the least. So here's the thing. My ADHD brain, it never stops. Ever. If it's not overthinking everything or bouncing between deep existential thoughts and slightly irrational concerns about a zombie apocalypse, it's singing or just playing music in my head. There is this constant inner dialogue, like a radio station that never shuts off, and it plays everything. I hear a word, my brain turns it into a song. If I'm reading, I hear the words in my head, like my own voice narrating everything line by line. It's nonstop. The other day, I asked my daughter a question. She responded, maybe. And the next thing I know, I am off singing Maybe Baby by Buddy Holly, and I have no idea what I just asked her. It's funny in the moment, but it's also kind of maddening. Meanwhile, she's rolling her eyes and snapping her fingers at me like, hello, Mom, you were saying? But I've already forgotten what I was talking about, because now I've got an earworm that will not leave until somebody accidentally triggers a new one. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. And if it doesn't, well, welcome to the inside of a brain that never hits pause. This will all come together, I promise. Now, before, if I would see a headline, suddenly I was planning for the apocalypse. If I worried about something small, my brain would say, cool, but what if we piled on 17 more things to worry about just for grins? It's draining, sure. Sometimes it's absolutely absurd. Sometimes it's overwhelming. Depending on the day, it's either my secret superpower or the reason I shut down completely and retreat into the quietest corner I can find with noise-canceling headphones and a gallon of coffee, which, weirdly, actually helps me focus. Now, personally, I'm more on the attention deficit side of ADHD, and it's my understanding women with ADHD are mostly like this. I mean, yes, some days I am nonstop fidgeting, getting up 3 times during a 90-minute movie to go fold laundry or do, something. But my real chaos lives upstairs. I'm the mind-racing, 137 tabs open, intrusive thoughts, easily distracted by everything kind of ADHD. I can overthink things until I exhaust myself. I start a task, I remember 10 others, and somehow end up vacuuming when I was supposed to be doing laundry. Then I'll get sidetracked to Google something before I forget. And next thing I know, I am lost in a research rabbit hole, with the laundry half done, the vacuum in the hallway, and no idea what the podcast I'm listening to just said for the last 20 minutes. And God help me if I go to a store without a list and headphones in. Normal, everyday stuff, right? It might sound funny when I say it out loud, but living sanely inside this kind of brain takes some real effort. And before anyone asks, yes, I know, medication is an option, and I'm not against it. For some people, it is life-changing. But for me, I've always been cautious about throwing meds at every problem, especially when the side effects can add a whole new level of chaos. I went undiagnosed for a long time. Honestly, I just thought this was my personality, overthinking, spinning, scattered, flaky. By the time I realized what was really going on, I had already started building coping skills, and I wanted to keep working with my brain, not just override it. Sometimes I think we're too quick to medicate before we teach people how to cope, especially kids. I can't tell you how many times I have heard someone say, this kid needs meds, instead of this kid needs support or skills or maybe just a different way of learning. Medication can be helpful, but it shouldn't be the only tool on the table. So, why am I telling you all this? Well, because I know I'm not alone. There are a lot of us like this. And in a world that already feels like it's teetering on the edge most days, from economic tension to nonstop news to another layer of global uncertainty, this flavor of ADHD makes everything feel louder, faster, and harder to manage. It turns a chaotic world into, well, a louder, chaotic world with flashing lights and a clown in the corner for some reason. I hate clowns, but that's another story. And honestly, when your brain already feels like it's yelling all the time, the added noise of the world doesn't just amplify it. It ricochets. It reverberates in every direction. Our already sensitive systems can go from overstimulated to completely fried in a matter of minutes. That's why we need coping tools that actually work. Not just for the chaos out there, but for the internal storm that external stress makes even worse. What's maybe more surprising, though, is that we're not always the loud, chatty, bouncing off the wall stereotype either. A lot of us are actually pretty introverted, quiet, a little withdrawn. Not necessarily because we don't like people, but because socializing is more noise on top of the internal chatter. When your brain is throwing a rave 24/7, every conversation can feel like another blaring speaker you're trying to tune into. And that extra noise, it only makes the already chaotic world feel even louder, more overwhelming. So it's not that we don't love people, it's that we're mentally tired all the time. And okay, sometimes we don't love people, but mostly we're just overstimulated. Yeah, this kind of brain is not always a fun place to be. The thought of spending 15 minutes inside my head, it actually terrifies my husband. I've always been this way, and I've always had a few go-to coping skills that have helped burn off some of that extra noise. But when I was diagnosed with cancer, it all hit differently. The first time, my brain went into overdrive. And the second time, at the start of the COVID lockdown, that was next level chaos. It felt like everything intensified. My thoughts, my worries, my need for something solid to hold on to. That's when I realized I couldn't ride the mental roller coaster anymore. I needed to give myself a seatbelt of some sort. So I doubled down and I found ways to stay grounded for real. That's what drew me back into the philosophy that I found so fascinating back in college. Buddhism, Taoism, and other moderns, which then led me to Stoicism. Those philosophies weren't written for ADHD, obviously, but they offer tools that speak directly to it, especially in times like now, when the world feels like it's shouting from every direction. When our nervous systems are on constant alert, it wasn't about sounding smart, it was about staying sane. And what I found, especially in Stoicism, is this: you don't have to fix your brain. You don't have to force yourself to work like everyone else. You just have to understand how you work and start from there. The Stoics taught that we can't control the chaos around us, but we can control our response to it. That little nugget, oh my God, life-saving. It gave me language for something I'd always felt. It told me I didn't need the world to quiet down. I just needed to stop letting it run my nervous system. It teaches self-reflection. Not the kind where you beat yourself up, but the kind where you actually finally get yourself, your patterns, your strengths, your short circuits. It's less about overanalyzing and more about working with what you've got. And that shift, that is where a little piece starts to show up. Thoreau once said that philosophy isn't just for debate halls, it's for solving the problems of life. And that made sense to me, because when the world feels like too much, I don't need abstraction, I need grounding. I make time for philosophy because it gives me clarity. Buddhism taught me to watch thoughts come and go without needing to chase them, to sit in discomfort without trying to fix it immediately. And Taoism, it reminded me that effort isn't always the answer, that sometimes the smartest thing you can do is pause and flow around the obstacle instead of crashing into it headfirst with your ADHD jetpack on full blast. I am not perfect at any of this, but those teachings helped me build an inner scaffolding so that even when my brain is doing cartwheels, I've got something steady to lean against. Not just take a bubble bath and light a candle grounded, but brain-saving, soul-saving grounded. And honestly, as weird as this might sound, I'm a little grateful for what cancer taught me, because now, in the middle of this chaos, whatever today's flavor of it is, I have got tools that actually help keep my spinning brain calm. So let's talk about what those are. I would love to hear what works for you too, because let's be real, half of us are still building the plane while we're flying it. If you love someone with ADHD, or work with one, or accidentally married one, understanding this internal chaos might explain a lot. Chaos is not just annoying, it's dangerous. It turns up the volume on everything, but it doesn't have to drown you out. Here are some of the things that help me calm it. I've talked about all of them before. First, meditation, with a little help. At first I thought meditation was supposed to be peaceful, this Om kind of thing. But my brain was like, oh, hey, welcome to silence. Let's overanalyze everything you have ever done since 1993. So I gave up on it for a while. What I finally found actually works for me is progressive relaxation and guided meditations. Anything with a voice to override the internal chatter. I need a voice louder than my inner monologue to talk me off a ledge, if you will. Silent meditation? Not happening. But a calm voice walking me through a body scan is a total game changer. Visualization techniques do not work for me at all because, as I've said before, I have aphantasia, which means I cannot picture things in my mind's eye. Literally, if you say, imagine a beach, I know what a beach looks like, but I don't actually see it in my head. So when a meditation guide says, picture a calming waterfall, I'm just sitting there like, okay, words, but also nothing. Then there's breath counting. I love box breathing, the whole breathe in for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4 thing. And sometimes it works, but sometimes my brain gets lost halfway through, believe it or not. So I've learned to accommodate, I do something simpler. I just count each breath. 1, breathe in, hold, breathe out. 2, breathe in, hold, breathe out. It helps me focus on the calming breath without getting lost in constant counting. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that is the reality of an ADHD brain. Simpler often works better. Music is a mental reset for me. It helps regulate my mood, distract me from spirals, and it gives my brain something steady to latch onto. I use it all the time for energy, for focus, for emotional regulation, all kinds. Classical, 80s, heavy metal, country, jazz, rap, new age. Just depends on my mood. Then there's movement. Movement is key. Exercise does not have to mean hitting the gym, walking, yoga, strength training, dancing around the kitchen. Anything that gets me out of my head and into my body helps. Physical movement burns off the extra energy and keeps the mental tornado from touching down. Then there's visual anchors and to-do lists. I rely on lists, calendars, and sticky notes like my brain depends on them, because it does. Even text messages from my very well-focused husband. External structures help reduce internal chaos. If it is not written down, it doesn't exist. Period. Then limiting noise, literal and emotional. Sometimes it's about turning down the volume on the news, on the social media, on overstimulating conversations. My brain does not need help getting overwhelmed. Boundaries are an act of self-care. Then there's tiny, mindful moments. This isn't about perfection. It's about noticing the birds, a shadow, the way coffee smells. 15 seconds of just being here instead of 47 thought spirals. That is mindfulness. It's medicine. And It's why I sit outside every single morning. Nature calms my crazy brain. Finally, there is shutting the brain down at night. You know, for some of us, nighttime is when the noise in our brains really gets active. Just when the world goes quiet, my brain turns up the volume. That's when progressive relaxation comes in, starting at my feet, working my way up, letting each part of my body soften and settle. But if and when my brain starts to spiral anyway, I use a trick I picked up from Wayne Dyer. He said that the last 5 minutes before you fall asleep are the most important because they program your subconscious while you sleep. So instead of letting my last thoughts be stressful or chaotic, I list things I'm grateful for. Little things, big things, anything, even on bad days, especially on bad days. I make a conscious effort to end the day on something good. And it makes a huge difference in my sleep and in the way I feel the next day. Navigating chaos with an ADHD brain is hard. It is so easy to get buried in the stress. It's a real struggle, a kind of mental weight people without ADHD probably never fully comprehend. But hopefully this gives you a little more insight into it. I hate to admit my brain is like this, but if it helps someone feel seen or less alone or gives other people a glimpse of what it's really like, then it's worth talking about. If this hits home, remember, you're not broken. You're not lazy or crazy. You're just wired differently. And with the right tools, different can still mean powerful, grounded, capable of peace and calm. If this isn't you, maybe share it with someone who needs to know that they are not the only ones whose brains suddenly break into song because of a single word. Let me know in the comments if you deal with it. What does your ADHD chaos look like? Or how do you calm the storm? You don't have to navigate this solo. We ADHD folks might be scattered, but we're never alone. There are a lot of us. If you're still here, thank you for watching. I appreciate you. Thank you for sticking with me. As always, take care of you, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.